Hello there, and good to have you along. I'm Howard Bentham, and this is OxTalks, the podcast powered by Enterprise Oxfordshire, the new name for OxLEP. This new organisation now benefits from the support of Oxfordshire County Council, enabling Enterprise Oxfordshire to continue the great work previously offered by the county's local enterprise partnership. As we are very proud in celebrating on OxTalks, Oxfordshire is blessed with some incredible innovators and business leaders. OxTalks gives you the opportunity to meet these remarkable people and hear their ideas on current business issues. At Enterprise Oxfordshire, we're delighted to have viewers and listeners to OxTalks from far and wide in the UK, as well as overseas. And we always welcome feedback, comments and suggestions too. Please feel free to share your thoughts on the topics we discuss on our social channels. We are at Enterprise Oxon on X and Enterprise Oxfordshire on LinkedIn. This series also sees the launch of our new official OxTalks Instagram account, home to dedicated clips, news and all things OxTalks. Be sure to follow along at OxTalks_podcast. You can also email us by using the email address on the podcast description. In this edition, we will explore business growth via international expansion through the lens of one woman's story and vision. Aspirational SMEs and organisations looking to grow their companies through import and export, as well as those looking to create a footprint in a foreign territory, are on the rise in the UK. Currently, the UK globally is the fourth largest importer and fourth largest exporter of goods and services, according to government figures. We're third in the global league table for inward foreign direct investment and fifth for outward FDI stock. Nearly 280,000 British businesses export. That's around 11.5% of all UK companies. And there's a big appetite for more. According to figures from the Santander Trade Barometer, almost a third of all UK businesses are considering international expansion in the next 3 years. What are the advantages and indeed the pitfalls of trading overseas? It's one thing having foreign clients, but creating a footprint in another territory is a very different matter. Issues around language, local laws and taxes, the vagaries of exchange rates, as well as global tariffs and the impact of Brexit all need consideration. So let's explore this with our OxTalks guest, who set up Liquid, a global award-winning integrated communications agency over 20 years ago, which now works across 25 jurisdictions and 20 time zones, with offices in Birmingham in the UK and Brisbane, Australia. Our guest also has played a significant part in shaping the communications landscape in the UK, including being a mentor to the Government Communications Service and undertaken 2 capability reviews for the Cabinet Office. She's also considered as one of the country's leading crisis communications experts. I'm delighted to welcome to OxTalks Lis Lewis-Jones. Great to speak with you, Lis. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us on OxTalks. Can we rewind to the very start, 2004, when you set up Liquid in the room above your mum's garage? Why did you decide to start a PR agency and why then?
So if anyone's had children, they'll understand this. I had a 3-year-old and a 5-month-old baby. And at the time, I was managing director of a very large PR company in the centre of Birmingham. And I don't know whether it's hormones, but I suddenly had that crisis of confidence thinking, I can't do that. If I set it by myself, I'll be able to create that work-life balance. And that has to be a real benefit with such a young family. And so that's what I did. My mother's garage was really convenient. It had no heating, but it did have her next door. And therefore, I also had an instant babysitter. So it wasn't sort of, through rose-tinted glasses. That was a great idea. That there was sort of a strategy behind it.
How long were you in PR before you set up on your own?
So straight after university, I graduated and I had a degree in politics and Russian studies. It's like, what do you do with that? And I wrote to Birmingham Airport at the end of my second year of university and said, hey, can I come and be work experience over the summer? And they wrote back and said, yes, we've never had work experience before. You can be our first ever summer student. So I went, and they really didn't know what to do with me. So they stuck me in the marketing department.
Right.
And then I was put in this external relations department, which was essentially the press office. And there I had to categorize the photo library and start writing press releases. And I just loved it. And I found a real sort of gift for it. So much so that they said, come back at Christmas. And then they said, when you graduate, would you come back?
So what was it then? What is it about PR that grabbed your attention? I mean, obviously you could do it, but
I think
something's made that light bulb go on, hasn't it?
Yes, I'm essentially quite a nosy person. So I always like to know what's going on. And I think you have to be quite nosy if you work in the media, because you need to find the story and ask the questions. And also, I always like to be the first to know. And if you're in the PR world, you normally are very close to the chief exec, and therefore you are the first to know. And I think it was as simple as that. And to be able to help shape someone's reputation and to be able to sort of present something in a really positive light and to have a real positive impact, I think is an absolute gift.
What about the changes over the last 20 years or so? I'm sure you've seen a lot of those in the PR industry.
Oh, huge. Well, we're talking over 30 years from when I started in 92, and you used to put out a press release and it would take all day to put out a press release. And you're smiling because you're probably quite familiar in the fact that you would send out the press release with a proper picture in a hardbacked envelope, and you would print out names and attach them to the back, and it would take all day. And now, obviously, you send out press releases worldwide within an hour or so, even less than that. And there was no social, there was no digital, everything was either print media or broadcast media. So you really learnt to cut your teeth on that. And even now, a press cutting comes in and I treat it like gold dust. And I can see some of the younger kids looking at me to say, I don't know why she's getting so pleased with herself with that. But, press was so important in those days. And for me, it still is.
So it's obviously changed a lot over the last 20, 30 years, as you're saying there. One of the sort of, should we say, new incarnations is fake news, unfiltered content. You've touched on social media as being such a big outlet now. Does that mean that PR is more of a sort of must-have for big organisations these days?
I think it is, because people really expect big corporates to behave appropriately. They expect you to behave with authenticity. And if you don't, they will call you out. So it's really important that people get the message right from the very beginning. And also it's very easy for organisations to fall very quickly. So you have to have a good reputation to start with. And we see that a lot with really big, and I'm thinking of Marks and Spencer's. Marks and Spencer's had a great reputation at the very beginning, and then their sales started to slump, and the fashions weren't that great, and people stopped buying their underwear from there, and all that sort of thing. All the things they were known for. But we forgave them because they had such a good reputation, and actually we've allowed them over time to rebuild themselves. So it's really important to have that good grounding right from the beginning.
Liquid has grown tremendously since you started. Was it now over 30 members of staff?
Yeah, just under 40 globally, yes.
That's amazing. 25 jurisdictions, 20 time zones. How have you managed that growth? Take us through the sort of changes that have brought that about.
So I think it has happened over a long period of time. So you also have to think about sort of the fact that Liquid has developed as I have developed as a person, and also as my family have developed. And I think that's really important, that if you are a founder of a business, you're going to do things not just because the climate is right, but because of your own circumstances. When my eldest son went off to do weekly boarding, I actually acquired a company in the Channel Islands. And I then had offices in both Jersey and Guernsey, which was the first in the UK. When my youngest son went off again to board at Bloxham in Oxfordshire, I went into the centre of Birmingham. So I wasn't just, down the road where they, close to their school. I was able to make that leap into a city centre. When my youngest son left school, I went to the other side of the world. And I think, to be able to do that within the confines of your family is really important, because when you're talking about a chief exec, you're not just talking about the business, you're talking about their personal life as well. And everything comes intertwined, and I think that's key.
So you've obviously focused on your family and your family changes, but to get to just under 40 members of staff, you've got to view them as family almost in some respects, haven't you?
Oh, absolutely. And every time they go, hey, we've just bought a house or we're getting married or having a baby, I think, oh, I've got all that responsibility sitting on my shoulders. But also I have a team, and that makes a massive difference. So I've got a great COO who's got a completely different way of looking at things to me. And I've got a senior leadership team who all bring different qualities. And I think that enables us to grow as well.
I'm sure it's not all been plain sailing.
No.
Over the years. So take us through some of the lows before we look at some of the highs.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because when you set out, you always think you're going to have this wonderful graph that's going to go from bottom left to top right, and there'll be this seamless line of growth. And in fact, it's something which resembles perhaps some crayons done by a child on acid, because it's all over the place. And things change all the time. In 2008, I was president of the Chartered Institute of Public Relations. And that actually enabled me to go across to the Channel Islands. And that was really positive, because in 2010, a lot of clients in the UK were cutting their budgets. Marketing is one of the first things to go. And so I was able then to sort of start working with agencies in the Channel Islands, which were pretty much covered in cotton wool. And that's why in 2011, I was able to actually acquire a company over there. But that whole sort of 2008 to 2011 time in the UK was really tough. And I remember, we were cutting rates and scrabbling around for bits of business. And I suddenly thought, no, we need to, a bit like a certain beer, be reassuringly expensive. Actually, I need to go to other markets and see what other markets are doing, and to take yourself out of that situation. And I think that's where actually the love of working internationally has stemmed from, because it does give you that ability to go into different markets and to take advantage of different economies.
What was difficult about working in the Channel Islands? So I'm just trying to understand, because obviously we're talking about growing businesses through international expansion on this episode. What were the things that really struck you about, my God, this is not as easy as it looks?
No, it's not, because it is going into a whole different country with a completely different political system and a different way of doing things, despite you thinking actually they're going to be incredibly similar to the UK. And they also have a very different mindset and culture out there. I often joked with colleagues, they have a certain sense of entitlement, but that's been brought on by the banks. And I'd phone up sometimes at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon and think, nobody's in the office? They're all on the beach. That's not great. I'm sitting on the M40, M5, M42, M6 junction in the pouring rain. Why is nobody there? So a very different kind of work ethic and a different way of doing things. Saying that, though, I had the offices there for a considerable amount of time. And actually, it was only during lockdown I suddenly thought, I can actually service all these clients from the UK and do it at a fraction of the cost, and do it better than we were doing in the Channel Islands. So there's always learning. So now I'm thinking, were we right to go over there? But actually we were. It gave us household names of banks, Barclays Wealth, Lloyds International, NatWest International, ABN AMRO, all those sorts of big offshore banks, which we wouldn't have had as clients if we'd just stayed in Birmingham.
Yeah, I mean, it's the agility that you've shown over the years, I think, that's put you in the position that you are. So share with us some of those accolades then, and the achievements that you're most proud.
Oh gosh, what am I most proud of?
Come on, you're in PR, you can blow your own trumpet, surely.
Yeah, she says blushing. I'm really proud that we won in 2021 Best Agency Outside London with PR Week, because who'd have thought that an agency with a head office in Birmingham would have got it? You'd expect that to go to someone in Manchester, for example. We won then the following year in 2022 Global Agency of the Year. That was a PRCA Platinum Award. And we were right up against agencies from China, Japan, the Middle East, America, and yet an agency in Birmingham won it. And I was really proud of that. But I'm also really proud of other things. So we had somebody in the Channel Island who won City and Financial Personality of the Year. We've won a Best Intern of the Year. And actually, earlier this year, I won Businesswoman of the Year. So that was a really nice thing to do.
And the work with the Cabinet Office and central government, how did that come about?
Yes, I think because I've played a role within our industry. So in 2008, I was president of the Chartered Institute of Public Relations. And that was kind of putting back, even though at that point, my kids are still little. They're like 4 and 7. And then in 2011, 2012, I was PRCA Council Chair. So again, so I've had these quite big, meaty roles within the industry. And I think because of that, people within the Cabinet Office knew me and within the Government Communications Service. And they thought, Liz will do it. So that's how that came around. But actually, they're fascinating. So the first one I did was on regional comms and the importance of how the government communicates regionally. And the second one I did, capability review, was actually on the then Department for Business and Industrial Strategy. And the irony is now I'm an export champion for the Department of Business and Trade. So I'm kind of seeing it from all different angles.
Yeah, fascinating insight you've got. Should we explore the topic of taking your business overseas? As well as clients worldwide, you've expanded now in Australia, physical offices in Brisbane, and now Melbourne as well. When did you know it was the right time to go fully overseas like this? I mean, you've talked about your journey into the Channel Islands, but with all respect, Melbourne and Brisbane, slightly further away and slightly different culture. How did you know it was the right time, and why Australia?
So it was a client that enabled us to do that. So for the last 10 years, we have worked with Quebec maple syrup producers. We represent all Canadian maple syrup producers over here in the UK, and we now represent them in Australia. And they came to me and said, the UK is an established market. We're now looking at another market to go into. And I just kind of flippantly said, you really should try Australia because they have a great brunch culture. The reports coming out of Australia on the whole food scene is really fascinating. And I think actually you would find that a great market to be in. So they came back and said, we're going to do some research. We're researching South Korea and Australia. And I was like, save your money. It's going to be Australia. They came back and said, you were right. And I said, yeah. And I can do that for you. And at that point, I'd never even been to Australia. But it was one of those, it's a bit like an actor who says, yes, of course I can ride a horse, and then goes and learns to ride a horse. It was one of those where I thought, yeah, right, we can do that. And they said, okay, just get together a paper for us on why you can do it. Oh, no more than 2 sides of A4. So I did, just, the cultural similarities, the media landscape that is so similar to ours, and then the opportunities and how we were going to do it. And they told me in August 2022, you've got the account to handle Australia, but you need to be operational on the ground by the 1st of March 23. So I needed to work back from that and say, right, I need a team on the ground by mid-February.
Gosh.
But we did it. And you asked earlier about sort of things you're proud of. Actually, after 18 months of being on the ground in Australia, we won a PRCA APAC award for Best Country Campaign. And I just think that's amazing that in such a short period of time we were able to do that.
We talked about your agility, but was it a case of just like, let's take the template from the Birmingham office and plonk it in Brisbane? Is that what you did? Right.
No. Okay. It's fascinating because one of the things I think that's a benefit if you're going to go expand overseas is to think actually a Commonwealth country is a really good idea because they have the same legal framework as us. So it was actually quite easy to get an office set up and to register a company in Australia. I had to do a little bit of background. You'd have to take a step back and think, do I need a holding company here? Because how am I going to get money out of Australia back to the UK? How am I going to manage the differences in tax? So it's really important to get some proper advice. So I set up a holding company, and under that holding company, I then had Liquid Australia. So it was all set up properly right from the very beginning. The hardest part was actually getting bank accounts and also proving who I was. I don't have a footprint in Australia. Nobody knew me. I don't appear on any database. I don't have any property over there. So I couldn't even get a credit card for the Australian office for a year because I didn't have any credit ratings.
So what sort of difficulties does that create practically day to day then?
So it just meant it was actually, in Australia, you have to have an Australian director number. So it was really hard for me to get my Australian director number. And only then do you then get your ABN, which is an Australian business number. And of course, in Australia, they use lots of acronyms. So you think, oh, we speak English, it's going to be absolutely fine. No, in Australia, they shorten everything. They stick an O on the end of everything, and they have an acronym for everything. And, we talk about a P11D, and they talk about an FBT, which is a fringe benefit tax. So you have to learn a whole new lot of jargon, which I wasn't expecting.
Yeah. And more red tape than you thought?
No. I think that I've had really good accountants who've helped us navigate that. There are different types of taxes over there which you wouldn't expect. So if you employ more than a certain number of people, you then pay a staff tax because you're obviously doing quite well. And you think, wow, that would go down like a lead balloon in the UK. But then there's lots of different grants you can get in Australia, which you wouldn't get over here. So it's a case of, as you would go anywhere, doing your homework and understanding it right from the very beginning and not being afraid to ask questions. And I'm very good at saying, no, can you just rewind that? And I'm going to put this into simple language and you're going to tell me if I've got that right. And if I haven't, can you just explain it again?
Yeah. Just more broadly, I mean, how does the current economic climate worldwide impact scaling businesses internationally? It's tough pretty much everywhere at the minute.
It is tough. And of course, it's so fluid at the moment. We've just had a period, haven't we, where things coming out of America have changed, not just daily, but by the hour. Are we going to have a set tariff? Aren't we going to have a set tariff? We've always had tariffs. We've always had to deal with tariffs. I'm different because I'm exporting a service. So that helps in some ways. But also, on the back of Brexit, we knew that the government was going to build stronger relationships. And they have done. So with Australia, we have the free trade agreement. We also, with Canada, have the CETA agreement almost on steroids, which has been really beneficial. And we've always had some kind of tariffs with trading with America. The previous government did a lot on memorandum of understandings. So they had loads of MOUs between the UK and Pacific states. And you just need to sort of speak to the Department for Business and Trade, and they will help you navigate your way through as to which states are the best ones to trade with. So that helps. But it's fluctuating. What it is doing is making it quite difficult with people to trust products from America. Because if things are fluctuating so much, then they're going to go and look for that product elsewhere.
Just back to Liquid for a second, and you personally, was there any nervousness about making the leap? You've explained why you've gone to Australia really, really clearly, but I'm sure you must have lain in bed at night thinking there's a huge risk here because the reputation, if this goes belly up, your reputation in a world of reputations that you work in, it would not be good. Yes. And also, if that doesn't go well in Australia, what impact would that have on our client relationship with the same client in the UK? Yeah. Absolutely. But Did you agonise over it? I thought about it. I didn't agonise over it. My COO always says I'm a far too positive person and I'm a real glass half full kind of girl.
And my response to him is, well, of course I am, because if I wasn't, I wouldn't have set up a business in the first place. And I think you have to have that belief in your ability. Otherwise, you wouldn't try anything and you wouldn't go anywhere. And what's the worst that can really happen? You don't set out to fail, but you will always try to do your very best. And I think that's important.
It's still going well in Australia?
It's going really well in Australia. Yeah. And in fact, we have more than doubled the workforce since we set up. So it's a great team there. We set up in Brisbane to start off with. And if anyone's looking at setting up overseas, I would say go and find, the organisations, a bit like an Oxford Enterprises. So Trade and Investment Queensland were fantastic helping us to set up. And we also have a relationship with Invest Victoria, and we've now set up in Melbourne. And actually one of our new clients in Australia is the government of South Australia. And they're desperate for us to go and set up in Adelaide. So watch this space.
Wow. Okay. Well, maybe more on that in a bit. And what about just the sheer geography of it? It's a long way away. I guess trying to keep the culture the same as what you're doing in the UK, so it's still liquid. How do you manage that with the distance?
So again, it's a mindset. Yes, it is a long way away, but actually we have great technology that allows us to speak to people all the time. I set Liquid up when my kids were really little. So I was used to getting up in the middle of the night. I now just get up in the middle of the night for another reason. So I'm often found on a call to Australia 10, 11, 12 at night, even 1 o'clock in the morning. Or I will get up really early. I often have meetings at 6 a.m., 6:30 a.m. They just see me. They don't realise I've actually got my pyjamas on.
Perhaps a good time to take a moment. Liz, thank you. We'll chat again shortly. You're listening to OxTalks, the podcast powered by Enterprise Oxfordshire. Feel free to get in touch with the Enterprise Oxfordshire team to comment on what you've been hearing. You can find us on social media. We're on X at Enterprise Oxon or via LinkedIn. Search for Enterprise Oxfordshire. And now via our new OxTalks Instagram account, home to dedicated clips, news, and all things OxTalks. Be sure to follow along at OxTalks_podcast. Perhaps you run a company or organisation that's looking for some specific help or simply need a pointer towards the most appropriate business advice available. Why not try the Enterprise Oxfordshire Business Support Tool?
Enterprise Oxfordshire's Business Support Tool is here to help your company, whether you are just starting out, growing, or ready to take on a new business challenge. If you are looking for the latest advice and support, complete our Business Support Tool today and get set to receive a bespoke action plan for your organisation. Head to enterpriseoxfordshire.com to find out more.
Let's speak more with Lis Lewis-Jones from Liquid, the award-winning PR agency based here in the UK, and also now with offices in Australia. I'm really intrigued around the issues of language. Let's say the Australians speak English, local laws, taxes, the vagaries of exchange rates, as well as global tariffs. How did you manage all of that? There's a whole melting pot of things there.
Oh, completely. And there have been times I thought it's a long time since I did my economics A-level, especially when it comes to exchange rates, because you've had to get used to it. And I was getting really confused with how I was going to manage all the different currencies. And not only that, even in the UK, we have clients in Canada and America who want to pay us in dollars. So I just went to my bank and said, help me. And they were like, oh, well, why don't you set up a couple of accounts in different currencies? So we have accounts based in the UK in euros, Australian dollars, American dollars, Canadian dollars, as well as sterling. And I think that's really useful. And I really wish somebody had told me that, years ago, that we could do something like that, because you end up then thinking, how am I going to move money? What's the exchange rates going to be like? You end up sort of listening to news bites every morning, sort of looking at sort of, whether the currencies are fluctuating or not.
So these are British banks that are offering the service in euros, in Canadian dollars?
Yes. We bank with Handelsbanken, and they will actually do that for us. So I can go on and look at our, the company bank account, and I've got all the different accounts then in different currencies. But nobody tells you that. So I think sometimes you just have to ask lots of questions. And I think it's really useful also to talk to others who are trading internationally. And I'm a member of the Women's Presidents Organization, which is actually an American group, but they have a chapter. It sounds a bit like a cult, but they have a chapter in Birmingham and a chapter in London. And it's only for women who are business owners. And actually, that's a great forum to sort of say, hey, guys, have you come across this? Because I need some advice on it.
Yeah. And being brave enough to ask, I guess, sometimes, isn't it? That you don't know the answer. We're not born knowing.
No, we're not. And actually, it's really important, I think, that when you're in business, you need to find a safe environment of people, others who are in business, that you can actually sort of share that.
The tariffs, which, as you said that we've always had tariffs. You're right, we have. Do you think the increased trade tariffs globally are making some businesses perhaps take a bit of a step back and be a little reticent in looking to go overseas?
It's a yes and no answer. And I think for some, especially in products, depending on sort of the sector they're in, they're going to relook at it. But also you have to weigh that up with what's happening at home. And the economy isn't brilliant here. It's been stalling now for well over a year. It doesn't look like it's going to improve anytime soon. So actually, it's a great opportunity to go overseas. And I think it's really important when you are considering to go overseas to think, what is the business opportunity for me? And what is the point of difference it's going to create? So I always think sort of, long term, is it because you want to sell a company and to be able to say you're a global player? Is it because you want to go after a cheaper labour pool? Is it because you want to go after a specific skill set? One of the things behind going to Australia was because actually the UK is a leader in marketing. And therefore, when we landed in Australia, it was fantastic in the fact that we had case studies on social and digital and made great grounds right at the very beginning because they don't have the same level of capability as perhaps we do.
That's interesting, that is, just to pick those areas. So I guess it's sort of spotting the niche in these countries then, that if Australia is behind us, for example, does that sort of... Is that sort of the thinking you need to do before this, or is that something you find out when you get there?
No, you've got to keep doing your research. And it's really important that, I keep doing lots of reading. I subscribe to Australian newspapers and make sure that I'm aware of what's going on over there. So when I do go over there and meet people at a business networking event, I can talk about what's happening in the country. I can understand what the news channels are saying, what the news channels are like. I think that's key.
To give you the tone of the country, if you like, the mood of the country. I guess not an issue for you with the Australian venture, but how has Brexit affected the ability to do business with Europe? And what are your clients saying about that?
So it hasn't. We do a lot of work in France and Germany, and it hasn't made a difference at all. But again, it's because we are doing a service and we're helping our clients, normally international clients based in either Canada or America, try and get their products into mainland Europe. It has actually helped us in some respects because a lot of these companies then sort of see the UK as being separate. So we almost get a separate budget for that. And also because there has been so much work done behind the scenes to then sort of rebuild the relationship with a lot of countries, especially those within the Commonwealth, means that actually the free trade agreements are working well and people are very open to have a conversation with you.
And those conversations are important. Let's just have a look at the help that's potentially out there. You've talked about some of the organisations that you've been a part of, and naturally you're going to make lots of contacts that way. But think back to those early years of having just launched Liquid. Did you utilise any business support? What was there for you?
So back in 2004, there was absolutely nothing there.
Apart from your mum doing the babysitting.
Yes, yes. If I had been set up in the Northeast, I know people who had sort of, websites done for them, grants thrown at them. And the same with, if I'd set up in Wales, I would have had quite a lot of grants available. But as a middle class woman in her early 30s, I had absolutely nothing I could tap it into. And so actually it's been quite a revelation sort of setting up overseas. I dropped an email to the Department for Business and Trade thinking I'm never going to get a response. And they came back and said, how can we help? And they came into the office and said, right, let's put you in touch with our DBT colleagues in Australia. What kind of research would you like us to do? Let's introduce you to the Australian British Chamber of Commerce. Let me introduce you to the Consular General based in Brisbane. And suddenly I had a network. And that's what you really need on the ground is a network. And they have been amazing. And I work with them quite a lot, so much so I'm now an export champion for the Department for Business and Trade. So I always say to people, if you are looking to export overseas, go and speak to the Department for Business and Trade. They will give you a trade advisor. And that person is there to hold your hand. They'll look at your website and go, actually, that's not fit for purpose for what you need in the country you're going into. They will have a cultural intelligence person come and sit with you to talk to you about language and how to behave and if you shake someone's hand or if you don't shake someone's hand, all those things. It's a wealth of information and amazingly, it's free. So businesses should really tap into it.
Did you receive any advice or inspiration that's really stuck with you personally over the years? You've talked about your glass half full. That's your sort of positive attitude. But what about the advice that somebody has maybe imparted that you go, I live by that?
It's really interesting because I grew up in a household. My father died when I was actually very young, but my parents used to talk business all the time. He was an engineer and he had his own engineering businesses. And I always remember my mother used to be chatting to him and then she used to turn to my brother and myself and say, seize every opportunity that comes your way. And I think that's been the best advice. Seize every opportunity, even if you just look at it. If you get the opportunity to go to a networking event, don't say I'm washing my hair or there's this program I want to watch. Go to that networking event. You never know who you're going to meet, and always follow up, always be polite, always send thank you notes. And it's those things, just to be on people's radar. And I'm always amazed where business comes from. And a lot of the time it's people said, I met you at an event or somebody recommended you. And you would never have thought business would have come from that at all.
People like people. People do business
Yes.
with people they like. That's a fact. We're going to start to bring our conversation to a close, Liz. But what's next for Liquid? Or should I say, where's next?
Oh, so in the office, they always tease me about global domination.
Yeah,
and
they've got a big map where you're sort of, it's turning pink.
We actually have a poster on the wall, which is Liquid and a dot. And the dot is sort of goes round the globe. I actually say it's not about global domination. It's about being world class. Because as soon as we stop being world class, we lose everything. I would love, though, to go to New Zealand. I would love to go to Canada. I think Singapore is really interesting. And I think there's loads of opportunities. And in fact, the Far East is fascinating. If you look at the population there and the growth and the investment, that's well worth looking at. The Middle East also, they have no tax. It's not that far to get to. If you look at a world map, they're right in the middle. There's loads of opportunities. And it's just a case of going out and exploring it. The only issue is time and making the time to do that. Because running a company is 24/7 as it is.
Right. So you would need physically then to take a step back from the day-to-day to expand to Singapore or New Zealand.
Yes.
Realistically.
Yes. And I always say to people, when you do go overseas, it's a bit like setting up in Australia. You think, yes, I can do that. And you do a plan and you work out the numbers. And I always say to people, double it. Double the amount it's going to cost and double the amount of time you think it's going to take, because it does cost a lot. And when we first set up in Australia, I took some of the team from the UK out there to help get things set up. So you've got all of that cost, the accommodation, the flights, the travel insurance, all those sorts of things, which you wouldn't really think about. So yes, do the plan and then multiply it many times over.
Finally, for a small or growing business, or perhaps considering expanding internationally, an aspirational entrepreneur listening to our conversation, what's the takeaways for them from this?
So I never set out from the very beginning to have a company that operates globally. And some people, when they say, in your intro, you said it's a global company, I'm like, yeah, it is, isn't it? I set out to just make sure that I could have a work-life balance and to contribute to the house with 2 young children. But I think, opportunities came up and you seize them. And that's the best thing to do. People write these business plans and I think that's great. But you need to be flexible. You need to be able to sort of adapt. We said pivot a lot in lockdown. You probably still need to pivot quite a lot at the moment anyway. And just go where your gut takes you. Listen to your gut. I think it's really important.
Lis, thank you. Huge thanks to Lis Lewis-Jones from Liquid, and thank you for listening to OxTalks, now in its 4th series. There are 19 previous editions of OxTalks to catch up on, available from where you normally get your podcasts. Let me point you towards an earlier episode featuring Sarah Powell, HR Director at Belmond Le Manoir, on how to create a happy and motivated workforce. There's my conversation with James Clark, Managing Director of Hook Norton Brewery, exploring how independent organisations and their employees can adapt to the ever-changing business landscape to compete with larger companies and achieve growth and success. And don't miss the episode featuring Melanie Tattersall from Darsica Logistics with some practical steps to growing a sustainable business. Every episode is well worth a listen. Please spread the word, tell your friends or colleagues about us, and if you feel so inclined, leave us a review. You can share your thoughts and suggestions on our social channels, and you can email your ideas for inclusion in future editions too. The address is on the podcast description. Business support in Oxfordshire is just a click or a call away. Enterprise Oxfordshire is at your service. The business support tool can signpost you to expert help in a matter of minutes. Why not take a look? Find it on our website, enterpriseoxfordshire.com. But for now, from the whole Enterprise Oxfordshire team and from me, Howard Bentham, it's goodbye.